Hey guys, it's me. I'm sorry that this is still being filmed on my phone, balanced on a box. I will be getting my camera sorted soon, probably, if I ever have money again in my life. So as you guys have seen, I went to the south of France recently and went on a Christian package holiday, which is a company my family and I have been using for years. We've been going away with that company since my brother and I, were in our teens, and we still use it because my mum uses it and she invites us on holiday with us, and holidays are good. Neither my brother nor I are religious in any way anymore, but we go on the holidays and I guess sometimes just agree to disagree with the people there. I do think it's important to open your mind to how other people think and be interacting with people who think differently to you. That is a good thing, but at the same time it can be a source of stress if you are with people who have different views than you on like people's basic human rights, such as LGBT rights, abortion rights, blah blah blah. Especially if you're on holiday and you're kind of in a situation where you're forced together and like you wouldn't normally be in that situation. If you were, for example, at the church and you disagreed with people, like you'll only be at the church for a couple of hours and then go home, whereas on a holiday it's very intense. You're with people for a long period of time that you might not agree with, especially if it is a religious holiday. Even if you are religious, you might still have different views and beliefs to them. So that can be a bit of a problem. It can make things quite difficult if you're in that situation. So this is going to be a storytime video about some homophobia I experienced while on holiday, and it's also going to be a bit of a talk about homophobia in the Christian community. So that is your warning now. I don't want to hear that not all Christians, hashtag not all Christians are bad. I don't want to hear that your cousin Gary is gay and he goes to church and he's never experienced homophobia in his life. Like, well done that man, great, good for him. But some people have experienced those things and it should not be considered taboo or offensive or anything to talk about your own experiences. So yes, not all Christians have this viewpoint, but a lot of them do, and I've experienced it throughout my life from a young age, like young enough to know what gay meant, pretty much. So if you're going to watch this and bear it in mind, great, but if you're going to watch it and just say that not all Christians have that viewpoint, I know, great, thanks, but a lot of them do, and it is a problem, and it is an issue that needs to be resolved at some point. So basically this situation started when we were in the marquee, because within the campsite we had our own area and we had like a marquee by the side of it, and everyone used that for the religious meetings but also like to eat our breakfast and stuff. And we were like socialising in there and charging our phones because I have electricity, thank God. And I was sitting there with a teenage girl, and her mum was there and a couple of other young girls were there, like early 20s, like younger than me, you know? And we were just having a general discussion. We were talking about terrorist attacks and stuff like that, and like the Ariana Grande concert, just various issues that happen and how people carry on. You know, if someone lives in London and there's like the Westminster Bridge attack or 7/7 or whatever, people tend to have the mindset that you should just carry on. We were just having a kind of, I know that's depressing, but a quite nice conversation about dealing with the disasters of the world and not letting it get to you. We were just like talking about that kind of thing, and it was like a fairly nice conversation. And then one person said something that was really praising of Tim Farron and how great he was and how he stands by his beliefs and stuff. So for those of you who don't know, Tim Farron is a British politician. He was or is the Lib Dem leader, so that's like the centrist group, and he is a very religious man who thinks it's a sin to be gay, and he's been questioned on it a number of times and kind of avoided the question and stuff, which like obviously if you're questioned, do you think it's a sin to be gay, and you refuse to answer or you can't answer properly, like, you obviously do. I think he eventually just lied and went, no, I don't. Like, someone must have just told him to say the moral thing, or like the popular thing, that it's fine to be gay, but he's clearly very anti-gay. Now, at this point, I could have kept my mouth shut when they were, like, praising him or standing by his beliefs or something. Or they were praising, like, something he said. I don't think it was to do with being gay, but they were still, like, praising him and thinking he was great. And I could have kept my mouth shut, but I'm a kind of person who stands up for what I believe in, and even if I then get shit for it, like, I feel bad if I don't do what I think to be the right thing, and I feel bad if I don't say something. So I said, Tim Farron, oh, you know, he thinks it's a sin to be gay. And they just turned on me like a pack. Like, not the teenage girl. She was beside me because we were both charging our phones. So I was turning this way, so I couldn't really see her reaction. I didn't want to turn to her. But one of the people who was reacting was her mum. And I think it's quite embarrassing. Like, I assume the young girl isn't really homophobic, and I didn't want to... Like, she's probably quite embarrassed by her mum being like that, so I didn't pay attention to what she was doing. I was looking this way, and they just turned and were like, it is, the Bible is very clear. And I was like, but people can't help being gay, so how can it be a sin? And I was very, like, I didn't want to be aggressive or confrontational, but I was, like, standing my ground. But at the same time, they were, like, a big group of people. Like, it's kind of hard to stand your ground when that's happening. And one girl was like, it is, because the Bible says, which isn't a good reason for anything. Like, the Bible says, yeah, whatever, but for what reason? Like, you have to be able to back that up. None of them were really able to back up their views, and they launched into a tirade of, one young girl said that that's why HIV exists, because gays exist, which is completely scientifically, medically, or whatever, like, provably false. You can physically prove that that is a lie, because, like, that's not someone's opinion, that's like a factual statement that you can prove is bullshit. My mum is an infection control nurse, so I was thinking, what would she do if she was here? And I told her afterwards, and she was like, what? So when she said HIV exists because of gay people, and it's like a gay people disease, I said, so why do so many straight people get HIV? No one could answer. And they were backing her up, but when I said, why do so many straight people get it, they were like, oh, that's just a difficult question. Oh, they do sharing needles and stuff, which is not true. Like, straight people can share needles and get illnesses. That happens, but straight people also get illnesses that are sexually transmitted from having unsafe sex. It's got nothing to do with your sexuality. Straight people can have sex and get HIV just as much as gay people can. It's not a gay disease. And it's like the 1980s, it's a gay disease thinking that is so harmful, and has been so harmful in the past. So at this point, I'd kind of disproved that, but in a really nice way. I was kind of like, oh really, but so many straight people get it from sex, and they kind of knew they couldn't answer. And then more and more people were saying God doesn't like it, it's in the Bible, and I said, okay, but why would God make someone gay if he's against them being gay? And all their answers were like, oh, well, that's like that's a question, isn't it? That's like a question. That's like a really hard question. And they had all these really strong views on the subject, but if you asked them to back up their views, they could say nothing. Which, like, you shouldn't be having views that you can't back up somehow. I don't mean that you should be, like, a genius on the subject, but if you're going to have a really strong view on something, be able to back it up, or shut up, basically. And at this point, the mum of the teenage girl started speaking up, and, like, I couldn't see the girl's reaction to it, but I'm assuming she doesn't have the same views just because she hasn't shown that, so I'm going to assume that she doesn't until proven otherwise, you know, innocent until proven guilty. So the mum started speaking up, and she started saying that it's biologically impossible for two men to have sex, at which point I felt like drawing her a diagram or something. I was like, it is possible, it happens, I've seen it. Go on the internet, there's proof. But she was talking about, like, having a baby, like it's biologically impossible for two men to have a baby, by which logic a straight woman who's infertile shouldn't be allowed to get married because she's biologically unable to conceive a child. This lady said that women exist... No, not her. Somebody else chimed in by this point. and said women exist for conception of a child, that's why women exist. All we can do is get married and have a baby, and if you're not doing that, then you're doing something wrong, which has gone from homophobia straight to sexism straight away. Like, I'm a woman, I do not desire to have children, and I won't have children because the church tells me to. That's really unfair on the child. That's like, why would you have a child you don't want to please someone else? I just think that's so wrong to put those expectations on people. Lots of straight women, I'm not calling myself straight, but lots of straight people do not want to have a child or cannot conceive a child. They're still valid, they still should be allowed to marry who they love. And all their arguments of why being gay is wrong, like, none of them could back anything up with anything like logic, reason, science, etc. So I was kind of winning at this point, but I was kind of keeping my mouth shut. So when they said that it's biologically impossible for them to have sex / conceive a child because they see it in the same bubble, I felt like saying, okay, but 2 men can have sex, but 2 women can have sex, and what if the person is transgender? Like, you can't assume that the man has a dick and the woman has a vagina, blah, blah, blah. She said 2 men can't conceive a child together, and I felt like saying, what if one of them was trans? And I felt like saying all this stuff, but I just shut my mouth because I felt like anything I said I would make it worse. And they were saying stuff like, and at one point when they were talking about like gay sex and how it's not biologically possible or it's not actual sex, blah blah blah, I felt like saying, so why do men have a G-spot in their butt? Obviously I mean like guys who are biologically male, whatever, not how they identify. I felt like saying that like gay men have a G-spot in their butt and like why is that there? And I just really didn't want to say that to some like 40 or 50-year-old straight mother who's like really straight-laced. I just didn't want to go on to like anal sex and the male G-spot and like porn, and like I just didn't want to talk about that. I felt like it, but I just shut my mouth and I just walked straight out the tent and went into out the marquee and went into my little tent and just closed myself in. Like, I didn't even say goodbye to anyone. I just got my phone off of charge and walked and went to my tent. And part of me feels like that was the best thing to do, but then afterwards a lot of me was going, oh, but you should have said this, you should have said, what about this situation, that situation, like women who are infertile and can't have a baby. All this stuff I just didn't say. And a lot of what they were saying, I forgot to mention this, they were saying that same-sex attraction is just one of those like unfortunate things of life. They talked about it like it was a disease. They kept using the term same-sex attraction, which it is. Like, it is same-sex attraction, whether it's physical, whether it's sexual or romantic, it's still attraction. But they were using the term like it was some kind of problem or disease that needs to be eradicated. I didn't like the tone in which they said it. And they said that same-sex attraction is unfortunate and it's okay to have that because you're just born with that and that's the way it is, but you can't live the gay lifestyle. The gay lifestyle, which is fucking bullshit. What they mean by that is, if God has made you to be gay, that's fine, you can't help that, you're not a sinner for being gay, but if you act on it by being in a relationship with someone you love, by having sex, blah blah blah, then you're sinful. So God wants to make people gay, but he doesn't want them to be with someone they love. Why would you worship someone like that? How can that be your belief and be like, yeah, he's a God of love? I don't know how you can believe both things. Believing that and yet believing that he's like a God of love and we should bow at his feet and he's a loving father, all this stuff, like a lot of Christians believe that stuff. I don't think you can believe both, because that's not a loving thing to do. Logically, if you think about it, there's no love in what they're promoting with that. And she then equated it to being single, which I'm gonna have to explain, because it's saying, oh, it's like being single, to us lot, like us sinners, would mean like, oh, no one wants to fuck me. But in their view, in Christianity, being single means being unmarried and therefore not being allowed to have sex, because they believe that, and I'm saying they, how someone else believes, but I grew up in this environment, so I know. I'm not an outsider saying that's how that person believes, I've like lived it. They believe that if you are unmarried, you cannot have sex. So if you're like 40 or 50 and you haven't found someone to marry, you have to just remain a virgin. Whereas in like general like atheist culture, that's not expected. Like, if you're not, you could be unmarried and still have sex. You can have a fling, or you can have like a meaningful relationship but you're not married. But in their belief, like, that's completely wrong. God forbids it, it's disgusting. God is like seeing into your bedroom and he's everywhere, and like you can't do that because God will find out. Which is a fucking scary way to be brought up. But some people are brought up that way. And I've heard other religious leaders, I mean, this person wasn't a religious leader, this was just a religious person who didn't have a leadership role, but I've heard religious leaders say the same thing when someone says it's unfair to expect someone who is gay to never be with their true love or have sex or whatever. They say, well, what about being single? Isn't that just as bad? You know, what if you're a 45-year-old man who hasn't found the one to marry? He can't have sex, he just gets on with it. Why can't the gays? So when they said, oh, but it's just like being single, God gives us different struggles, but, you know, in the future we'll be in heaven and it will all be good for us, so the struggles will be worth it, which I think is bullshit and very abusive. Like, he's gonna give us a horrible time, but it'll be worth it in the end. They were promoting some abusive shit, which religion shouldn't be about abuse, you know what I mean? They were saying that as I left the marquee. And afterwards, all I thought to say was, in response to that, was to go, oh, so how many people have been murdered for being single? That would have ended it. Because they're saying, you know, being a 40-year-old in the church who's unmarried and therefore not allowed to have sex is just as bad as being gay and not being allowed to have sex. But if I said, how many people have been murdered for being single? Like, either of those things is bad because someone else is policing your body, which is wrong. I'm happy with people to be celibate if it's a choice. Like, you do you. Be celibate, wait for the right one, wait till you're married, if you find that makes it more special. I'm not against that at all. I'm against it when it's somebody else policing somebody else's body. And both of those things are bad, in my opinion. Not because life is hard but we have to do what God says, but because the church enforces it. The church enforcing straight people to live a certain way and not have any ownership of their body or their relationship, in my opinion, that's bad. The church policing what gay people do is also bad, but at the same time, straight people who are single don't get murdered or fired from their job or banned from being in the army, etc, etc, etc. It's not the same. This is not just like one person. I've heard a lot of Christian people preach that it's just the same thing, so gays aren't oppressed, and it's not true. They don't have conversion camps to like force single straight people to not want sex, you know, they don't electrocute them. And I know this is a very dark video, but it's a dark world, so sorry to talk about these things. That's what I thought afterwards. After I just walked out and didn't answer her, afterwards I was like, why didn't I say that? Why didn't I say, so how many people get murdered for being single? And then she would have been like, blah, 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 and I would have won the argument. But I wasn't thinking that at the time. I was thinking, just get out of this situation. You are feeling anxious. So when I was in my tent, I messaged my mum, who was on a trip, a little cycling trip, and they'd gone to a cafe or something, saying that they said all that and saying, do you think that I'm bad or sinful for being the way I am? And she said, no, darling, of course not. I will speak to you when I get back and we'll have a chat about it. I'm sorry that happened. I thought, okay, that's good. And then one of the young girls came to the tent, the one who claims people like me are the reason HIV exists, and was like, hey, Amy, are you okay? Do you want to go swimming? Do you want to go and play bat and ball? Do you want to play tennis? Do you want to play a card game? Are you okay? And it was like she was feeling guilty that I felt bad and that I'd gone off looking upset, but she wasn't feeling guilty that she has really problematic, prejudiced views. She was feeling guilty that I was sad. Like, she didn't see herself as having a hand in that. It was clearly like, oh, I feel bad, so I'm going to do this to feel better about myself, rather than, oh, I should change my viewpoint because I'm believing things that are really harmful to society. So I was like, no, I'm a bit tired, sorry. I just did not want to see her. Now, this group that I've been talking about, this Christian holiday company, had a Christian meeting earlier in the week about same-sex attraction, which luckily I didn't go to. I didn't know it was going to be about that, but I don't like the religious meetings, and if I can get an excuse to stay in my tent, I will. But I came in because my phone was on charge in the tent, so I came and like got my phone and like sneaked in and grabbed it and sneaked back out because I needed my phone. I heard that they were talking about same-sex attraction and how to deal with it, and I'll talk about that mindset that they have. Hashtag not all Christians, but many of them. The mindset that I overheard slightly, they were promoting the book of a guy who has these feelings about it. Their viewpoint is like I've said already, that it's okay to be gay because that's how you are, but stay away from the gay lifestyle. My brother joked was like, we're having a certain amount of feather boas or something. Like, it's nothing to do with drag or how you dress or anything. They just think the gay lifestyle equals gay people being in a relationship together or having sex or doing whatever their body tells them to do and whatever they want to do. That's what they see as the gay lifestyle. And the overarching message, I only heard a bit of this meeting, but I got the gist of it, that it was like, we're not against gays, we're not homophobic, we just don't think they should have the gay lifestyle, and we think you should follow what God says. So that meeting had happened, and they were seemingly like that was the general belief that people there have. I recently found out that one of the religious leaders there doesn't have this view, but can't speak up about it because it's against the norm and it's against the company. So I had like a secret ally. But the general belief there was that belief. Like, that was the general belief, that was the norm. So on the last day, my mum and I, having packed up the tent a bit, went for a coffee in this cafe that's on the campsite, and we were just talking about the whole situation, and she was really promoting this book to me, like, not all people have that belief that they have, that being gay is bad, you need to read the book. And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to agree with this book because I already knew what it was about. And she said, oh, but check the book out because it's not saying that you can't be gay, and it's just saying that you have to do things God's way, blah, blah, blah. And apparently the guy who wrote the book is gay, or no, they said experiences same-sex attraction, but he lives God's way. In other words, he doesn't do anything romantic or sexual in his life because it's what God wants, which is his choice, but you can't expect other people to live that way. So I kind of thought that's what the book would be about. And I said, I don't think I'm going to agree with you on this book, but I'll have a look. Like, she's got a copy. I thought, I'll have a look. I'm not going to pay for it, but if it's there, I'll have a look at it and see what I think. See if it really is positive or if it's the way I think it's going to be. The plausibility problem, the church and same-sex attraction. And it's got us and I in different colours. It's like us and I, the team and the individual, I don't know. The plausibility problem, the church and same-sex attraction. Let's see. It's all very well to say that the Bible is clear when it talks about homosexuality, but is it realistic? Isn't it unrealistic and unfair to those who struggle with this issue? Doesn't it condemn them to loneliness, a lack of fulfillment, and the loss of basic human satisfactions like sex and marriage? Yes. Is what the church teaches a plausible way of life? I guess that's why it's called the plausibility problem. Like, okay, you say that about gay people, but is it really plausible? I'm guessing that's what it means. Ed Shaw experiences same-sex attraction. And yet, he is committed to what the Bible says and what the church has always taught about marriage and sex. In this honest book, he shares his pain in dealing with these issues, but at the same time, shows us that obedience to Jesus is ultimately the only way to experience life to the full. I think that's pretty clear. It says, is it really implausible? Is there a way that you can, you know, follow God's way and still be happy and be yourself and have the same human rights? It asks the question, and then it says, oh, a lot of people say it's bad, and then it says, no, this guy is gay or bi or whatever, and he shares his pain in dealing with these issues, but he says that the only way, the best way, is to follow Jesus's way, and it implies that Jesus's way is this abstinence view. So within the Christian community, there is a lot of, we're not homophobic because, etc. And it's like, we're not homophobic because we don't think it's bad to be gay, we just think it's bad to act on it. And we say that you have to live like X, Y, and Z. That is homophobic because it is policing what people can and can't do within their own sexuality. And they do the same with straight people. You have to live X, Y, and Z way, which is why I wasn't happy when I was in the church. Because like I said, I'm fine with people choosing to be abstinent until they're married or until they're in a serious relationship or something. I'm absolutely fine with whatever people are doing as long as it's their choice. Where I have a problem is when it is enforced. And that is how these people sleep at night. Like, these people aren't necessarily bad people. They don't want to be seen, they don't want to think that they're oppressing anyone. They want to follow their beliefs that are in the Bible and get to heaven and all this lot. But they don't want to think that they're homophobic or anything like that because, like, I think they're inherently good people and they don't want to be bad. But the fact is, they are still, although they're saying, we're not saying it's bad to be gay, we're just X, Y, and Z, it's still homophobic. It's still a form of policing somebody's life. and forcing people to live a certain way, which is bad. You do not force people to be sexual. You do not force people to be abstinent. Like, it's still there's no consent there. There should always be consent. Unless I know that these particular type of Christians who believe, I guess I'll call them the gay lifestyle Christians. The people who believe that being gay is fine, but having a gay lifestyle is bad. Those people are not the same as, like, the God hates fags Christians and the people who want to, like, burn the gay people at the stake, and the people who think it's horrible to be gay and anyone who's gay is inherently wrong, or the people who think being gay is a choice, blah blah blah. They're a separate group of people. I understand that they're not the same. These Christians maybe don't have as hateful values as these Christians, but they still have problematic views which are not in keeping with a modern society. They are against a certain type of people's human rights, and they should not be enforcing them on queer people, or making queer people feel uncomfortable, or making queer people have to live a different life. If they're choosing to be abstinent and stuff like that, it's fine. Forcing it on someone else is not fine. So in conclusion, after all that, I was very happy to get back to England. I didn't have any major incidents with anyone after that, but it's kind of uncomfortable to be in a situation where every single person there thinks that your type of people are the reason that AIDS exists and are the worst people in the world. Obviously, not all the people there thought that, but like a group of them did, and it's very uncomfortable. And it made me very aware of my own privileges, because I see a lot of tweets and stuff saying when you're next to your homophobic, racist, Trump-supporting family. Like, I see lots of, like, Thanksgiving things like that from Americans, and I see a lot of it from, like, the LGBT community from America, that they have these, like, far-right, Trump-supporting, like, racist family members, and they're queer themselves, and they can't admit it. And, like, although I don't agree with my family's views on the thing, I don't have family that are that bad, and I'm not constantly in a situation where, like, everyone hates the type of person that I am. Yeah. So it made me very aware of my own privileges, and it was really good that I could get out of that and get back to my home and be in a different environment. But I was really aware that some people can't do that. Some people are constantly in an environment where the majority of people are against gay people or bi people like myself, or transgender people, blah blah blah. And I was just really A, happy that I could get out of that, but B, really sad for the people who can't get out of that. So if you're going through that, I'm really sorry. I don't know what else I can say. I'm just really sorry that some people have to go through that. I'm really aware. I'm not aware of how bad it is in that I've been through it for a prolonged period of time, but I'm aware that there are people who are worse off than myself. So I hope you liked that video, guys, and I hope you found it informative. Please leave comments of if you've experienced homophobia or biphobia or anything like that, and we can talk about it in the comments. And this little queer unicorn has to go now and eat some pasta. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye!